Hello and welcome to another Insert Clickbait, where we today are painting the Saar from the Necromunda Secundus set, and we're going to be doing it fast. So today we're going to be painting the Saar from the Necromunda Secundus set. One thing I wanted from these was to actually paint them in quite a fast time. I got the set and wanted to be playing it as quickly as possible with some painted models to be able to get them on screen. I also wanted to match the artwork from the box and have at least an effective paint scheme and prioritize my time so that every step was as effective as possible. These were something that actually interested me out of the set more so than Saar have previously because of the fantastic artwork that comes with the Necromunda Secundus set. Now, what that shows us is actually a battle between a Spyra, the Gene Stealers, and the Saar, where we have this excellent. It's almost a black and white picture with then spot colours, like you would get in, say, the Sin City graphic novel film, or we saw on the front of the Cursed City box set, where you have the black and white, and then we've got this amazing blue colour and also a red colour from the opposing side to just give a real nice object source lighting. Now, I wanted to highlight this on the models by having an extreme light source from one side, which would then give us the armour all facing in one direction, with the opposing side being completely black and non-illuminated. And then on top of that, I wanted to add a secondary light source of the blue that would tie it into the rest of how I've done the rest of the set, as well as tie it into the artwork. And then finally, on the Saars, I've added a red OSL, which is going to tie it into that artwork again with the same colours. It's going to provide a tetradic split on a colour wheel to make it look really nice. And we're going to start the steps in just a second. So the first of the steps is to obviously undercoat the model, and I've undercoated it with a matte black from Colour Forge. Any matte black colour will do for this particular method, or if you wanted a different undercoat colour, underpainting colour, you can just select one of those and it will give maybe a more esoteric aura to the models that you're going to be doing. Now, when we get to the actual painting other than the undercoating, the first step that we're going to be doing is going to be establishing the light source and also giving us our armor color. Now, to give a large juxtaposition between the armor and the absence of light on the opposite side of the model, I chose bright ivory, and this is something that I actually chose for the other gangs in the set as well. So they're all done with bright ivory, but the only one that's going to be showing that is the Saar. So I started from the top right corner, like it's the one that I always pick. It's just a habit now that I always pick that side. If I was going to do a diorama, you'd obviously pick one side for everything, or one point around the diorama for everything. But when I'm painting individual models, I always pick, as you're looking at the model, it's facing you, the top right, so over its left shoulder. Now, I'm going to create the heaviest dry brushing on that top side over the left shoulder. And I'm going to basically fade out almost as if we were doing a zenithal highlight, but with a dry brush. Now, on the legs, I'm doing a straight line up and down, all down the armor panel, as if the model is stepping into the light, and then it hits the curvature of the leg and drops off sharply. That's something I've done on the face as well. And then the rear of the model, largely, I've done a small bit at the back where we've got a little bit of light shining over the shoulder, and then maybe the opposite foot and a little bit on the buttock there, and on the opposite foot on the back of the calf, just to give that bit of visual interest so that there is some sort of incidental light going that way. But largely, it's over that left shoulder of the model, the front light right as we're looking at it. So on this step, I'm also going to do a bit of dry brushing on the hair, and I'm going to choose 2 locations, usually at the base where it meets the skull, and then further down towards the end, or if there's a particular protrusion towards the light, I'm going to pick those locations and give a stark dry brush over those locations, which will then fill in later with a bit of colour specifically. So with our light source and armour established, I'm then going to get into the metals. Now this is actually a really quick paint job. For the entire gang of 8, I'd say it took me about an hour if I just sat down and done it intensely. Now, again, I'm going to be approaching the metals from the same direction over that same corner, the left shoulder, top right of the model, and trying to pick out those top edges and leave negative spaces in pretty much every surface that we're going to be applying paint to. So there's always going to be that aspect of black on any individual item. So the gun, I'm going to paint the top of the barrel, but not the bottom. I'm going to paint the top curvature. And, you know, just not having paint in some area just leans into the particular shading that we've got in the artwork that we're trying to establish. Now, if you do anything wrong in either this step or actually any step along the way, don't worry, because we're using a black undercoat, it's really easy to just go back to black and start again, because, or even just not apply color to that particular location in a lot of cases, because we're using black as an actual aspect of the model. Now, next from that, I'm going to actually brush paint some silver onto specific surfaces, maybe give a brush highlight if you're not feeling lazy like I was a little bit. So yeah, I'm just going to take the the hairy brush and just define a bit more those top surfaces that we see on the las gun and around the model in some places, such as any little buttons or not cogs, but any buttons or bolts that we've got, such as under the lamp pack, or anything that I wanted to add visual interest. Stick to the top surfaces for this and leave a bit of black, as I said, and it's anything that you choose not to paint will just be red as if it was purposefully not painted, like it's not been. So next I start filling in various colours about the model. For the hair, to give us our triadic split, I picked some yellow that is going to go with the blue and red that are going to be applied to the model later to give a nice harmonious colour range. I picked the Nasdreg yellow because I wanted a dark yellow that wasn't going to be too bright and stand out as if it was sort of a really bright area. So yeah, a darker yellow. I then actually, off camera here, because I just did it in a last minute sort of thing, while the camera was off, I didn't think to start recording it, sadly, but I just give it a wash of some Agrax Earthshade just to darken it down that little bit more and define the edges around it a little bit more, but not really any complicated stuff, just a quick wash over after having applied the yellow to the areas that we previously established with bone. Finally, I'm going to start applying anything to any surfaces that I particularly want to pick out so that it doesn't look like I've only got 3-4 colours on the model. Now, one of them was the holsters. So I got mahogany from Pro Acryl and thinned it down by, I'd say, about 50%, and applied that with quite a watery amount to the holster. Now, while that was still wet, what I did is I got some black by Pro Acryl and I actually painted the bottom third of the holster so that it would have a gradient from black to the mahogany in almost a wet blend, but a very quick, dirty wet blend. If you go a bit too heavy with the water, so you've overwatered your mix with the mahogany, that's completely fine. It actually just makes it easier for your black to seep through the paint and give a blend from bottom to top. So if you are worried about like the consistency of your paint, I'd recommend doing the mahogany with too much water in, because it'll just enhance that effect and give more capillary action to the additional black. Capillary action, is that the right word? And I used some Victorian brass from scale 75 to do any little bits of interest that I wanted to do about the model, like the heads of any bolts, or honestly, this was just done at complete random that looked visually pleasing to just pick out on the model. I applied to the top surface again, and it was as easy as that. Now, that is the last step we're going to do with traditional acrylic paints. So I went outside and I gave it a quick blast on all the models with gloss varnish. I used Holford's clear lacquer because it's a rattle can, so easy to use, and it's quite glossy, so it's good for what we needed it for. The next step is going to be a panel wash, and that's with oil paints. The gloss varnish's purpose is to actually help suck the wash into the corners and crevices on the model and in between the armor plates. Now, on these models, rather than on the Gene Stealers or Spyra models, I wanted it to be more confined to the panels. So that's why I've used a gloss here, whereas I didn't in the other two. What I do is I get an oil paint. I'm using Winsor & Newton here, but literally any oil paint will do, especially for just panel lining. It's not really going to matter which one you use. And I just thin it down, over thinning again, and then add in a little bit more if needed. Adding a bit more pigment to the thinned down wash as needed. And I'm just going to apply that to all of the white panel lines that are needed picking out on the model. And if the camera ever focuses, you're going to be able to see it just very easily going into the surfaces around the model and just sucking in and defining those lines a bit more. I do this for everywhere which is white, including around the eyes, around all the helmets, anywhere that has a joint between panels or a difference in surface direction, something that can basically just enhance and utilize the single color that we've really got on there up to now, utilize that color a bit better and a bit more. After that has dried, so about 2 or 3 days, or if you're impatient like me, after a matte varnish, we're going to get onto the other colors in the triadic steps, and also establishing the bit of throwback to the artwork that I mentioned at the start. So that blue undertones as well as the red for the triadic split. And we're going to do this with an airbrush. So the first one is going to be the blue because I wanted that to be a less strong light source on the model. So I use Games Workshop's Calidor Sky, and this is the same one that I've been using on all of the Secundian set, just so that it tied them all the models together. And I'm going to apply that to all the where I established the light source with the bright ivory. I'm going to do it from literally the opposite side, and even just have a very light hazing of it, not too strong. What I'm also going to do, and what I found quite nice, there was no reason for why I found it quite nice, but is along the edge that splits the black from the white, just slightly lapping over that edge so that it shows up very brightly on that edge. And I think it just shows the almost unworldly light source that is hitting and illuminating that armor a bit, or lapping onto there. I don't think it really makes any sense with real world lighting, but I found it quite a nice effect on the model. And then when we're going to start placing the red on top of it, it just worked quite well, I think. So finally, we have the last step, and I'm going to be using Vallejo red, just red, model hair for this. And I'm going to be basically getting the light pack or the lamp pack on the shoulders, as well as the eyes on the face. And I'm going to try to be as accurate as I can with the eyes on the face of keeping it around those sockets. Now there's a fair amount of overspill, and I even intentionally overspill, but it's bound to happen, and I was counting on it happening to be a almost OSL around those areas and give a brightness. Now, one thing that I found it quite good for this is going forwards with the airbrush, almost touching the eye and then pulling back so that I at least half knew where it was. I then keep my airbrush static and move the model fractionally itself rather than moving the airbrush around and keeping the model static. And I just find that easier to be accurate with the airbrush that way, because I know exactly where in space that cone is and where I can then place it quite easily. And it's basically just fly through these models, getting that red on there. I also used the red for any OSL, such as on the scanner, as well as on the arm piece that is on the the medic of the squad, to just give a bit of illumination around there. And it just ties all of the models together, having these same colours on them as we normally would to do an army. I thought, especially for Saar, which are very techy, it worked quite well. And actually, I've been watching Altered Carbon, the series, and the Space Marines, whatever they're called, they actually have these sort of very Vansari helms, and I'm pretty sure they have red on them as well. I was right, they're black with red glowing eyes. So that actually rounds out with this step the painting of the models that we've got. And actually, it was a very quick painting progress, as I intended it to be. I wanted to spend more time on the 2 Spirers as well as the Gene Stealers in the gang. And actually, I'm very happy with how they turned out. They're not perfect. There's some things that I'd like to do differently in future, such as developing a better way of doing that blue object source lighting, or maybe being a bit braver with it. Hold up. So we can't have that. I genuinely have been wrapping up this video, recording the outro after painting the gang, like having it boxed away. And I thought, I can't end it on I should have been braver doing this step, when I could just add the extra step, so I'm going to do it. So I've taken Sotec Green from Games Workshop to give that bit more of the turquoisey colour that we see on the actual set. Like, part, I think, of what was niggling at me was that the Calidor sky was too blue, but what it has done is formed a really good base for adding the dry brush of Sotec Green on top of. So that's what I've done, gives it that bit more of the turquoisey colour. And again, I'm taking it from this opposite source from my armour lighting. So it's from the back foot going upwards and just dry brushing onto the surfaces. I've tried to get actually some on the head in the same way in the Gene Stealer video, the Horus Spira video. I tried to split the face. Here I was trying to do the exact opposite, get some blue on the face, and it's quite a central focal point of the model, to try and get some colour on. So I've got a nice variation of colour across the face now, I think, and hopefully everyone at home, you guys all agree. Let me know in the comments about that. Should I have stopped before this step, because it was something that I was not going to do originally? And we'll get back to the outro, as it stood about 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, before I did that additional step. As it stands, happy with it. I achieved what I wanted, and hopefully I can have been a bit of help as you get on with some painting. If you liked this content, please don't forget to do all the YouTubey stuff, because it does let me know that you want to see this content. These are the first painting vids that I've done in a while, and actually doing them, I've enjoyed doing them. So if you want to watch more of them, do the YouTubey stuff, like, comment and subscribe, and it'll let me know that it's worthwhile doing this sort of content. If you really like it, there is a Patreon link below where you can get early access videos, access to the Discord, podcast formats of the Tuesday Talkie videos, and dice. And with that, I'll catch you next time in a bit.